Load it up. And we should be pretty close to live once this finishes loading. Here we go. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this session, Innovation Lessons from the Frontiers of Healthcare. Our impressive panelists all have ties to the University of Pennsylvania. You'll be hearing perspectives from Dr. Cynthia M. Otto, who is a tenured professor of working dog sciences and sports medicine at the University of Pennsylvania, School of Veterinary Medicine. Woo, that's a long one. She's the highly decorated executive director and founder of the Penn Vet Working Dog Center, where she oversees the fitness and medical care of the detection dogs in the program, provides rehabilitation and conditioning for police and other working dogs, as well as conducting vital research on and for detection dogs. We're also joined by Eshwar Inapuri, whom is a Y Combinator-backed founder at University of Pennsylvania trained bioengineer. He co-founded InnaMed in 2016 and has led the company to raise over $3 million in funding and generate over $1.5 million in revenue amongst the 6 patents held. Dr. Jessica DesNoyer, I apologize, Jessica, is a Wharton grad and CEO of Osteo, a seed stage medical device startup focused on improving the lives of people with craniofacial abnormalities. An accomplished healthcare and life sciences executive, Jessica brings a track record of building innovation centers and emerging businesses within several large corporates like J&J, Abbott, and Becton Dickinson. NeuroAlert CEO Eric Corkhill has over 40 years of healthcare technology sales, marketing, and management experience. During his career, he has launched 15 new and/or disruptive software technology-based products within the acute care market. He's raised over $30 million in private and institutional capital, and 5 of his previous startup companies were sold with a combined exit value of $480 million. Pretty good track record. Anthony Scarpone-Lambert is the co-founder and CEO of Lumify Care, a nurse-led startup improving patient experience by developing innovative tools and resources needed to support frontline healthcare workers. Lumify's flagship product is the Unite Light, a LED light allowing frontline healthcare workers to illuminate their workspaces while patients sleep. Launched in January of 2021. However, it has already been featured in the New York Times and scaled to over 10,000 nurses in all 50 US states. Anthony is also the first Penn nursing student to win Penn President's Innovation Prize, the Venture Lab Startup Challenge, and the Penn Wharton Innovation Fund Launch Award. So, man, he's doing it. And of course, our moderator for this session is a friend of the Penn Technique Show, Laurie Actman. Laurie serves as the Chief Marketing, Communications, and Program Officer at the Penn Center for Innovation at the University of Pennsylvania. And Laurie is part of the executive team, which oversees the strategic implementation of PCI's programs and partnerships, marketing and communications, and help plan and launch the Penn Innovation Center, Penn Startup Incubator. Laurie, you can take it away.
Great. Thanks, Vince. And it's great to be here once again as part of Philly Tech Week at the Introduce Conference. As we've grown the innovation sector at Penn via the Penn Center for Innovation, PCI Ventures, and now the Penn Innovation Works campus, Philly Tech Week has been a really important platform and strategic partnership for us to showcase all the amazing innovation activity at the university and our growth over time, especially over the last few years. So it's great to be here. And once again, we're really proud on behalf of all my colleagues involved with innovation at Penn to be able to showcase and host this amazing group of folks who are part of our ecosystem and really represent some of the latest innovations coming out of the university that could have real world impact on people's lives. So I wanted to, and Vince, thank you for the amazing introductions. Before we get started into the discussion, I wanted to give each of you a chance to introduce yourselves and talk a bit more about what you're doing with your project or company. So just going to my left, or at least my left, Eric, why don't we start with you, and welcome.
Well, good morning, Laurie, and thank you. And very, very happy to be here. Yeah, so CEO of NeuroAlert. It is a medical device company that addresses the issue of late stroke detection. There's 1.2 billion people living today over the age of 25 that will have a stroke in their lifetime, making it the number 3 cause of death and the number 1 cause of severe disability. What people don't understand is that 10% of all strokes that happen in this country happen to patients that are already in the hospital for other reasons, and that many of these strokes aren't detected for hours, resulting in poor outcomes and even death. So what NeuroAlert does is it uses non-invasive wristbands that are able to accurately detect stroke symptoms and then immediately alert the hospital staff so that they can more rapidly assess the patient and start those life-saving or stroke mitigating treatments.
Great, thank you. Jessica, why don't we go to you next?
Sure. So Jessica DesNoyer, CEO of Osteo, and our goal really is to improve the lives of people with craniofacial abnormalities. And specifically, as our first entry point into the market, we're focused on the over 200,000 children who are born each year with conditions that lead to growth restriction of their skull or mandible. These are otherwise healthy children, but if these conditions aren't treated, they can have debilitating to life-threatening consequences. So things like impaired neurological development, inability to eat, difficulty breathing. So the very functions necessary for these children to grow and thrive. But the treatments themselves are really devastating to these children and their families. Very invasive surgery that causes a child to lose up to half of their blood volume on the operating table. Treatments that really aren't curative and are just a bridge to a more morbid procedure. But one treatment area that is gentler by nature is something called distraction osteogenesis. But even though it's been used successfully throughout the skeleton, within the craniofacial skeleton where we're focused, it hasn't been adopted widely because of the form factor of the existing technology. So these are devices that poke through the child's face postoperatively. That is a nidus for infection and other complications. A parent is really the one who holds the responsibility for conducting the treatment. So a child is sent home and a parent has to take a screwdriver, attach it to this external component, rotate it a prescribed number of times up to several times a day, which is unintuitive, challenging for these parents, and actually emotionally traumatic as well. And the surgeon is blinded to the treatment process. So what we're doing at Osteo is developing a fully subcutaneous implant that has an external driver to magnetically expand the implant. A parent just has to hold the driver up, hit a button. The driver is pre-programmed by the surgeon, so it's no longer reliant on the parent to perform the treatment other than to just hit a button. And there's a remote monitoring platform that allows the surgeon to have transparency into the treatment process.
Great, thank you, Jessica. Amazing. And next we'll head to you, Anthony.
Hi everyone, my name's Anthony. I'm actually a soon-to-be graduate at Penn. I studied nursing here, and that's really where the idea and development from Lumify Care came. So I am the co-founder and CEO of Lumify. While I was in clinical throughout my time at Penn as a nursing student, I was always really frustrated and surprised by how clinical environments are not conducive to comfortable patient-centered experiences. If you or any of your loved ones have ever been in a hospital, I'm sure you can understand what that means, because hospitals are very disruptive, there's loud, and there's always these bright lights flashing in your face, even at night. So I saw this problem while my patients were resting. I was going into their rooms and turning on the overhead room lights that would wake them up. And I knew there could be a better way, so I paired up with some other nurses, and we created our first product at Lumify, which is the Unite Light, which Vincent touched on a bit. But it's basically a wearable light that allows nurses to illuminate their workspace while decreasing patient sleep disturbances on an average of 70%. And I have one of our prototypes here. You basically just attach it to your scrubs. And then our product actually utilizes colored LED lights, which is inspired from the military. Our product comes with red and blue light colors because the wavelengths go less distance and it's less disruptive to patients, but allows nurses to optimize their vision. So yeah, this is our first product. We're developing other products, all with the goal of improving patient experience from the front line.
Great, thank you. I'm not sure you mentioned that you just won the President's Innovation Prize, which is an amazing accomplishment, and that Anthony's just graduating senior at Penn. So those are, that's a lot to get done while still an undergraduate. So amazing.
Thanks. It's been a lot to juggle with clinical, but you know, that's the best part about Penn. There's lots of resources to support us. So
that's great. Eshwar, to you next.
Sure, thanks, Laurie. I'm the CEO and co-founder of InnaMed. InnaMed is developing an at-home blood testing device, and our core focus is enabling remote monitoring in clinical trials. Patients that are in clinical trials need frequent monitoring for kidney toxicity, liver toxicity, immunotoxicity, and other side effects for the drugs that they're taking. And oftentimes, compliance to monitoring is very difficult. These patients need to go in to get blood tests every week, multiple times a week, and that process is very difficult and limits the access to research, and also increases patient dropout and the cost of clinical trials, which slows down the time that these drugs take to get to market. So it's a very costly problem, and it's also a very important problem because a lot of these drugs are very important to the patients that are enrolling in the trial in hope of a cure or an improvement in their condition. So our goal is to deploy this at-home blood testing device that monitors kidney and liver function in the patient's home, and allow patients to enroll in clinical trials from more remote settings or settings where they don't have to go into the hospital every week or multiple times a week, thus improving compliance, reducing the cost of care, and also improving the patient experience. So that's what we're working on at InnaMed.
Great, thank you. Hopefully Cindy Otto will be able to log back in. I think we're having some connection issues. But in any case, just moving on in our conversation, you're all working on some really, I think, innovative and inspirational technologies in different ways. And I would love to hear from each of you kind of what further kind of discussion about what inspired you to get into what you're doing, or kind of what do you think is the most innovative thing about it compared to what exists in the marketplace. You all kind of touched on that a bit, but like what got you just so excited that you knew you were gonna like jump in and do this? Because none of this is easy. So that's really the point I'm looking for. So Eric, why don't we start with you again, and then we'll kind of take it from there.
Well, I've been in, as I said, healthcare for a long time, but the potential of affecting 1 billion people is very compelling. But the genesis behind the technology and behind the product was co-founder Dr. Messe, who's a neurologist at Penn, and quite frankly, stroke is treatable, but time is critical in that equation. And unfortunately, he was called in too many cases too late to provide effective stroke mitigating treatments. And so he wanted to do something about that. And he teamed up with the other co-founder, Dr. James Weimer, who is a PhD in biomedical engineering and signal processing. And they were able to develop an algorithm that is successful in mathematically modeling out all those things that cause asymmetry, being right-handed versus left-handed, an IV line that's impeding movement. Those things cause asymmetry, but they're not stroke-based. So this algorithm takes data from arm movement, asymmetry data, and it is able to accurately determine what is and what is not a stroke. So we have a very, very low false alarm rate, which is absolutely critical for adoption by nursing staff that do not want to be called inadvertently to the patient's bedside for inappropriate reasons. So all of that is very compelling to me personally, and looking forward to watching this company grow.
Great. Thank you. Jessica?
Sure. So Osteo was really founded out of a profound frustration for treatment as it existed today, and empathy for these patients and their caregivers. So one of the co-founders, Dr. Jesse Taylor, is chief of plastic surgery at CHOP, and he really is a pioneer in the use of distraction osteogenesis within the craniofacial skeleton. So he believed strongly in the benefit that a more gentle, gradual expansion of the affected bone segment could provide for these patients from a clinical perspective. But he was seeing firsthand the challenge that it was putting on their families to use this treatment. And also was deeply frustrated that he, as the surgeon, would put the device in, but the real treatment actually comes after the child goes home, and it's in the hands of the caregivers or the parents. And these parents, of course, have the best intentions in mind. These are their children, but to actually be able to follow a protocol as it was prescribed accurately just is really, really challenging. And I think what also really struck home for the other co-founder, who is a third-year plastic surgery resident at UPenn, was in seeing these patients treated. The only way that the surgeon can get a lens into how the treatment is progressing is to bring these patients back on a weekly basis, have them get x-rays, have them go through a clinical exam so that the surgeon can try to discern how far has the bone been expanded relative to where they think it should be at that point in time. And being able to see these children as they're going through this treatment. And as I mentioned, the devices have a piece that pokes through the skin post-operatively. It may poke through their head, it may poke through their jaw, and usually it's done bilaterally, so there's one on each side. And there was a child who had come over internationally. Her parents had to stay at a hotel in the Philly area for a month as she was going through this treatment because they had to keep coming back for the exams. And she didn't speak English. And on her last appointment, she said something to the interpreter as she was getting the external part of the device removed. And Ari West, the other co-founder, said to the interpreter, well, what did she say? And the interpreter said, well, she said, I don't have horns anymore. So, seeing how this treatment really impacts these children and the stigma that it creates also was a strong impetus for finding a better solution for these patients and parents. And that's really what drew me in. And I'll be honest, having had a fairly long career in med device, thinking of a pediatric application, thank God these are smaller markets, but they're more constrained markets. I wasn't sure that was what I wanted to jump into as my next opportunity, but I really just got pulled in from the emotional perspective of there needs to be something better for these patients. And also got pulled in from the challenge of knowing these devices are also indicated for use in adults, but they're not used there because of the form factor. That challenge of trying to figure out how to access that greater market opportunity also pulled me in.
Thanks. That's a very inspiring story about what's driving this technology. Anthony, to you next.
Yeah, for sure. So for us, I think Lumify Care and our passion for wanting to work on it and kind of, put all of our time and passion into building Lumify really came from being frustrated nurses. Just really frustrated that we felt like our care often conflicted with our patients' comfort. And the pain point that we identified was that 87% of nurses struggle to see while providing patient care, which then of course results in patients being woken up from the intrusive overhead room lighting. So really, it was just a drive from wanting to create a better way. And I think what makes Lumify Care's first product so innovative is that it's very simple. It's just, a really simple wearable light, but it has a huge impact. And I think that proves that to be innovative, you don't necessarily need to reinvent the wheel or create something from scratch, but rather kind of utilize your resources and really just finding a better way that works well on the front line. And I think we were able to do that just from our perspective as nurses.
That also great. Cynthia, while you're back here, hopefully to stay, I wanted to go to you and see if you could introduce yourself and maybe talk a little bit about what you're doing.
Sure. I am so sorry. I am having such internet connectivity problems, and now I'm on my phone, which is not optimal. So I run the Working Dog Center, where we raise and train detection dogs. It's a research, training, and education facility, and we really do everything about the dogs and what they do with their noses. So search and rescue is really the origin. We came from my work with the dogs at 9/11. But we've really moved into a lot of other different and interesting areas, including really extended into law enforcement. But I think the thing that's gotten the most attention recently is our work in medical detection. We've been working with ovarian cancer detection for the last 7 years. We've worked in infection detection, but COVID-19 has kind of nation to light. Diseases like the spotted lanternfly invasion. Hopefully that gives a little bit of an overview with the dogs that we raise and train to do amazing things for people.
So much, and the Working Dog Center is definitely one of, I would say, the most fun and innovative centers of activity at the Penn Innovation Works campus and at Penn. And it's also unique. I think Penn is the only urban Ivy League university to have a veterinary school, which makes us very unique in a number of ways. Eshwar, to you about kind of the inspirational innovation behind what you're doing. Thank you.
Right. For us, I think it started with the patient journey. If you look at a patient's journey through the healthcare system, even for someone with, scheduling a regular appointment, far less be it a chronic disease appointment, you have to schedule, you have to check what the copay is, you have to go through the process of, traveling to your visit, visiting the doctor. They may schedule a lab, prescriptions, you have to go to the laboratory. Those results take time to get back. So there's this whole process every time you want to interact with the healthcare system. And for us, we wanted to find a little piece of it and bring that infrastructure to the 21st century. So for us, that started with laboratory testing. There are companies out there solving digital health, telemedicine. For us, we wanted to solve the laboratory piece of it. And we wanted to make that part more efficient for patients to get access to that data. In our recent user study, 80% of patients said they wanted to know what their blood test data was, but only 50% of patients who received a blood test were ever explained what their results were or what they meant. And so that discrepancy between patients' access to data and their knowledge of their own health is something that we really want to open up and make a lot more transparent. And the second part of it is just the efficiency and the ease of patients when it comes to laboratory testing and being involved in the healthcare ecosystem, specifically starting with clinical trials. So that's kind of where it started for us as well, is the patient journey.
Thank you. And so important in this space, the patient orientation, which or the end user. So I appreciate all you collectively bring to that perspective. Now I thought it would be worthwhile to you all to highlight briefly how Penn or the innovation folks throughout the university may have supported or kind of helped you along the way. I think the resources that have evolved at Penn have certainly grown in the last 5 to 7 years. And, this doesn't need to be a commercial, but any nugget that sticks out to you certainly, I think would be great to talk about. So Eric, why don't we start with you again?
Well, yeah, so this is my 7th startup, and I wish I had the Penn Infrastructure for my previous 6. Because sometimes you feel like you're alone out in the wilderness and with no one to help or hold your hand. I think the Penn Center for Innovation Ventures Group really provides some great infrastructure guidance, everything from good business acumen to assistance with fundraising, both through grant as well as institutional money. They provide, networked services, legal, accounting that, quite frankly, saved me a lot of money as you're trying to, be very discreet and judicial with what funds you do have. So, all of that has provided me as CEO the foundation to be successful. So, very, very appreciative of what they've been able to do.
Oh, great. Thank you. That's wonderful to hear. Jessica.
Sure. I would just echo everything that Eric just said. But maybe in addition to that, for us, having the ability early on in the company, and this predated me, but early on in the company to do some prototyping within the university really helped us prove out the feasibility of what we were trying to do before we would spend the money and try to create a company and push this forward even further. So that was certainly helpful. And just the ecosystem, so the medical ecosystem with UPenn and CHOP right there has also been hugely advantageous for us. We were able to do a couple of clinical studies through CHOP, not specific to Osteo's technology, but specific in and of itself, but because we're trying to do something that hasn't been done before. So to distract the craniofacial skeleton with magnets rather than with a screwdriver, being able to really kind of figure out what forces are required to distract the craniofacial skeleton, what distance, so as defined by soft tissue, do our magnets have to work across. That was critical product development inputs for our system.
Great, thank you. And one of your founders came to South by Southwest with us in very early days.
Yes, and was able to raise some money.
Yes, so that was that will always be close to our heart. So Cynthia, why don't we go to you next? I know you're certainly well known around Penn, but would love to hear specifically maybe how Pennovation Works has been part of your growth.
Oh, sure, absolutely. And I think we're a little different because we are a nonprofit,
Right.
and we were the tenant that actually started off on the Pennovation campus before it became Pennovation Works. So we've been there probably the longest, other than transportation. And I think what's been amazing is the flexibility and the ability to kind of think outside the box. I mean, after all, we have a rubble yard on Pennovation Works, and so to manage all of that. And we worked really closely across campus. The collaborators that we of the different areas of the university have been incredible, and sort of being part of the university system has been helpful. And I guess anyone who's done animal work before knows that there are regulations, and our animal use and care has been incredibly adaptable to our unique situation. So that's been really an opportunity that isn't likely to happen in a lot of other universities.
Great, thank you. And Anthony?
Yeah, I could probably talk for a couple hours about all the resources that Penn has given me and Lumify. Just because, I've been an undergrad student throughout the development of Lumify Care. and really just every aspect of the entrepreneurial community, from other founders and just having kind of a support group to kind of get through the roller coaster of building a venture, all the way from early stage funding to kind of validate the market and help us with early prototyping. It's been like literally support in every aspect. And I think for me, especially as a Penn nursing student, since there's not many nursing students kind of tapping into the entrepreneurial world, kind of to see the growing presence of nurses in the entrepreneurial community at Penn has been really exciting. And just, from accelerators to mentors, I mean, it's just been phenomenal. So very grateful. I think Penn's resources definitely accelerated our growth and helped us launch a lot quicker and probably a lot cleaner than if we were without all of the great resources here.
Great. You're amazing. You're an amazing example of someone who's really found as an undergrad and used them to help your efforts. Eshwar, would love to hear from you.
Sure. Yeah, actually, I'd love to echo what Anthony said. I founded Penn while I was an undergrad. I founded InnaMed while I was an undergrad at Penn, and utilized a lot of resources at the undergraduate stage, from very early stage funding to prototyping resources that Jessica mentioned, all the way through doing clinical studies. We work with Penn Vet to do studies on animal blood samples at the very early stage. Then we graduated work with Hospital University Pennsylvania blood samples to do research there. Just a very easy ecosystem to kind of do research, collaborate. And then also now we're based in Pennovation, and Pennovation has been a great place to meet other companies from Penn, collaborate. We see there's a lot of animals on Pennovation's campus, actually, a lot of dogs. So very good place to be, very lively. So overall, we've had a great experience being in the Penn ecosystem. It's a really good place for startups.
That's great. I love to hear all your answers to that question. So thank you. I thought now, we're hopefully in the stages of crawling out of our current circumstances and back to some normalcy. But would love to hear a little bit from each of you about how the pandemic impacted what you're doing, maybe, both opportunities and challenges. If anything else, if nothing else, I should say, it certainly put a big focus on healthcare and maybe the accelerated need both around, access, equity, but also just healthcare overall. I mean, and also who knew we would need COVID sniffing dogs. So would love to just hear from each of you. And I think we're all feeling a lot more hopeful about how things may be better when we're fully back in society again. But Eric, would love to start with you.
Well, clearly you miss the human interaction. I mean, of the 4 team members, I've met 3 of them only once since I joined last May, one I've never met. So, trying to have a cohesive, synergistic work process, doing everything remotely is sometimes challenging. On the flip side, organizations like PACT, like MADV, like Ben Franklin, they have gone so virtual in how they present things, as well as the VC and the angel community, that I have found there is a significant increase in efficiency, but also availability to tap into these organizations. Rather than flying to San Francisco and trying to queue up 5 or 6 meetings over a 2 or 3 day period of time, I can have a 4 o'clock meeting with a San Francisco firm and a 4:30 meeting with a New York firm. And that would never happen pre-COVID. So it's a yin yang. I miss the human interaction, but there are certain things that are just much more efficient and, as I said, available now.
Great. Thank you. Jessica.
Yeah, similar to what Eric said, Osteo was working virtually anyway because I live in the Boston area, and I was fortunate to have flown down to Philly to meet with the two co-founders literally a couple of weeks before COVID hit. So I've met them. But there have been others that, we've brought in through our networks, even my own network, but I haven't met them in person, and they actually live here in the Boston area as well. So it'll be nice to be able to go and have a coffee and meet up and talk shop over a table as opposed to through a computer screen, for sure. We were very fortunate in that, much of our work is done through an external product development firm who was up and running through COVID. So it didn't slow us down. And so we've been able to push forward on the technology side of things while, as Eric mentioned, capitalizing on the efficiency side of things of being able to, have calls and meetings virtually. But yeah, definitely looking forward to being able to get some more human contact as we move forward.
Yes, hopefully next year in person at Philly Tech Week as well. Anthony?
COVID has impacted Lumify in a lot of ways. I think in one lens, just the fact that I think nurses have been really highlighted this year more than ever has been really, I think, helpful to our team, but also really inspiring us to want to support nurses even more and more quickly. Obviously nurses have been really at the front line throughout the pandemic caring for patients. And at Lumify, we really want to provide them with the best tools that will support them. And I think COVID has shown just how important that is. I think secondly, it's been a challenge just from the pilot perspective. I know as we were developing our first product, it was happening in the brunt of COVID this past summer. And we were doing a pilot at 3 different hospitals. And it just was, a lot of challenges to deal with while, hospitals were obviously preoccupied with COVID. I think in our benefit, Unite Light is super simple. So it was, we could drop off product and have nurses still fill out surveys and, do things virtually. But it definitely presented some extra barriers, if you will, when we were getting things up and running. But yeah, overall, I think if anything, it's really energized our team to want to accomplish our mission even quicker.
Great, thank you. Eshwar?
Yeah, so for us, the pandemic really emphasized the need for, again, increasing access to the healthcare system for folks who are, live far away from healthcare resources or, are unable to travel, or even patients who are at risk. So for us, during the pandemic, especially, almost a lot of clinical research was paused or, halted or decreased due to patients not wanting to go into a hospital or laboratory on a frequent basis. Patients, and a lot of these patients in clinical trials are often at risk. And so it's not safe for them to go to a hospital or a laboratory. And so during the pandemic, there's been a lot of innovation around how do you bring the hospital to the home so that these patients don't have to go in person. And even after this pandemic is over, those innovations are going to stick around, because what we found is that it's cheaper to keep the patient at home. It's better for the patient. They love that experience of not having to go to a hospital. And so that's part of the trend that we've seen, and that's become an opportunity for a lot of startups. For us, we, from a functional perspective, we're a laboratory-based company. We do a lot of research and development, and so we weren't able to work remotely. So we had to adapt by, putting in place protocols to reduce spread, make sure that, employees are acting safely, taking the right precautions. And so we were able to kind of go through the entire pandemic with none of our employees contracting COVID. Everyone was safe, everyone's families were safe. So I think we were able to do that without any issues. So putting in those protocols in place, Pennovation did a great job. So we had a good experience with that.
Great, and that's some great nuggets in there. And finally, Cynthia.
Yeah, so COVID affected us in a couple of ways. Directly affected us because all of our dogs live with foster families, and so we couldn't have the dogs coming into work. So the poor foster families had to homeschool these really crazy puppies. So that was a challenge. It also, research-wise, opened up some new doors for us, and that was in the COVID detection. But because our fosters, we ended up collaborating with a trainer out in Maryland and working with them. And but now that we've been back pretty much full swing as far as our staff and our trainers, volunteers, but our dogs have been in school now since but we are doing the COVID detection work at the Penn Vet Working Dog Center.
Amazing. And I appreciate the challenge of homeschooling virtually. That's amazing that dogs were able to do that with their foster families. So in the few minutes we have left, I thought it'd be great to hear if there's like one positive thing that's come out of this experience that you plan to bring back to your company or team or efforts in, you know, as you move forward, if it's a new habit or something you plan to do as part of your company culturally. Would love to briefly hear what that is. I think we're all coming back maybe with a new sense of appreciation of our team members, just, you know, getting through all of this together. So Eric, I'll hand it off to you.
Well, as I mentioned, 3 out of the 4 people I've only met once and 1 I've never met. And so actually we're all vaccinated. And so we're going to have a company party in just a little bit over a month. And I'm going to actually see the members that I'm working with meet their families for the first time. And I can't tell you how excited I think we all are to be able to have some human bonding and get to know each other as people, not just as fellow employees.
That's a great idea. Jessica?
Yeah, not to keep saying what Eric said, but you know, I think for sure that as efficient as we can be working remotely, and thankfully, I think COVID has taught us all that remote working is possible. You know, I think pre-COVID, there were still schools of thought that it's always better to be there in person. And given the structure for Osteo, I think it was critical in sort of our company culture that was demonstrated on a broader scale. But nothing can replace human contact and human bonding and getting to know each other on a more personal level. And certainly I know I'll be I actually was down in Philly a few weeks back and was able to connect with one of the co-founders. The other was out of town, but now that we are all vaccinated as well, being able to get down there and meet as a broader team, I think will be very important for our team morale going forward.
Great, thank you. Anthony?
For us, our team of nurses kind of entering the post-COVID world, I think one thing that's really top of mind for us is just mindfulness and taking time to just breathe and relax and giving ourselves space to have a break if we need. I think especially like working clinically and growing our business, it's really easy to feel just like emotionally burnt out. You know, my co-founder is like an ICU nurse and was working throughout the pandemic. So I think really in the post-COVID world, our priority is just mindfulness and making sure that, you know, everyone has the space to, you know, work efficiently, but also keeping in mind that we went through a tough year.
That's a great reminder. Eshwar?
Yeah, I think for us as well, it really emphasized, there was a period early on in the pandemic when we were all, you know, working from home for a bit and then, you know, alternating shift basis where, you know, we half of us came in on Mondays and Tuesdays, other half on Wednesdays, Thursdays. And so really emphasized, you know, again, that for us, that human collaboration is important and it can be done from home. But it also kind of showed us the importance of being able to bond with your employees. You know, for us, you know, we changed our processes to make things more flexible, you know, focused less on hours in the office and more on, you know, just being, you know, creative, collaborative. So definitely changed the culture a little bit as well.
Great. And I think we might have just lost Cindy, unfortunately. But I guess to wrap up, I really want to thank all of you for joining us. You really are the face of innovation emerging from Penn, which we're like all really proud to be part of and to help support your efforts. And I also just want to encourage everyone. The Introduce conference today has some amazing speakers and content. So just stick around for the conference. And thanks again to Philly Tech Week and Technically for having us. Have a great rest of the day, everyone. Good to see you.
Take care. Thank you all.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
So much, everyone.